Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. We're looking at something a little different this time around. We're talking about creative genius and those ripple effects.
Mhm.
And have you ever felt just kind of lost creatively? Especially like when a huge artist drops a new album, like somebody like Kendrick Lamar. I feel like the whole one just shifts a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And we're going to use Kendrick's new album, GNX, to kind of explore this feeling and how we can actually use that energy to fuel our own creativity, even if you haven't heard the album yet.
I think what's really fascinating is how these moments, like a big album drop, become these cultural catalysts for introspection. And they spark all these conversations that make us all look inward at our own creative processes.
I love that. Okay, so to really dive into this, we're going to take a look at an episode of the Creative Vibes podcast
Mhm.
where the host, Mike, who's a content creator himself, is talking about this exact feeling of being creatively lost after GNX came out.
Yeah, he even admits to being a little intimidated to even listen to the album, almost like he's afraid of how amazing it is and how that might make him feel about his own work.
Oh, totally. It's like being a chef.
Yeah.
And then Gordon Ramsay moves in next door and is like whipping up these incredible dishes every night. You'd probably be a little hesitant to even like turn your own stove on, right? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
So I think the big takeaway here is that it's completely natural to feel intimidated, especially when you're faced with something that feels like a masterpiece. But it's important to remember that even masterpieces are built on the influences and foundations of others. So don't let that feeling of awe completely stifle your own creativity.
Right. And Mike's co-host, Transcript the Truth, offers some really great advice. They basically tell him to just listen to the album without any expectations. Just let the music kind of wash over him
Yeah.
and just jot down any feelings or thoughts that come up. Like what resonates with him, what inspires him, or even what doesn't connect. It's all about just absorbing the art first.
Yeah, just soak it on. I remember when I first saw the movie Inception, my mind was totally blown. I spent weeks just thinking about it, dreaming about it, before I even tried to write anything inspired by it. I think that space to just absorb something without feeling that pressure to create is so important.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed. You're not trying to immediately clone the plant. You're planting it in the soil of your own creative mind. Give it space, the right nutrients, and then you can kind of watch what unique plant emerges.
I love that analogy. And actually, Transcript the Truth even suggests that Mike could create a Kendrick-inspired series for his channel as a way to channel those vibes he's getting from the album into something personal and unique.
Right, and I think that's really where the magic happens. GNX becomes a springboard, not a blueprint. It's about taking inspiration and
Yeah.
making it your own.
For sure. So think about how you might personalize inspiration. Yeah. Like maybe create a mood board based on the album's themes,
Hmm.
or try writing in that same stream of consciousness style, or even take a visual cue from the album art. Like how does the album art make you feel? What colors or images come to mind? And could you use those as inspiration for your next project? It's about making those connections in a way that's uniquely you.
Absolutely. And it's also about remembering that every artist, even someone like Kendrick Lamar, has their own influences. They mentioned Tupac Shakur specifically as an influence on Kendrick,
Right?
which I think is fascinating because you can definitely hear those echoes in Kendrick's work.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. When they drop Tupac's name, do you hear those echoes in Kendrick's music? It's so fascinating how artists build upon the work and legacies of those who came before them. And I'm curious for you, is there an artist or a creator whose work inspires you in a similar way?
Totally. And going back to the podcast, Mike actually has this aha moment when he realizes that just talking about his feelings about the album helped him process his creative block.
Yeah, sometimes all we need to do is just get those thoughts out of our heads, whether it's talking with a friend
Mm.
or a mentor, or even journaling. That act of externalizing those thoughts and feelings can be so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. It can help us untangle those anxieties we have and see our own path more clearly.
So I want to pose this question to you listening right now. How can you apply this idea of absorbing inspiration without comparison to your own creative process? What's your GNX? Is there something you've been hesitant to engage with because it feels too big, too intimidating?
Mhm.
Or maybe you're afraid of how it will make you feel about your own work. Think about that for a moment. And we'll be right back after a quick break.
To dive even deeper into this idea of finding your flow amidst creative influence. It's interesting how Mike initially resists even listening to GNX. Like he's almost intimidated by its potential impact. But through the conversation with Transcript the Truth, he starts to see it as an opportunity rather than a threat.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. That fear of confronting something truly powerful, worrying it will like expose our own shortcomings, or diminish our own creative spark. When I first started podcasting, I was so intimidated by all the incredible shows out there.
Right, but how do we overcome that? Like, isn't some level of comparison kind of inevitable? How can we learn from the greats without comparing ourselves to them?
That is such a good question. I think it's all about shifting our perspective.
Uh,
Instead of focusing on the differences, what do we try to look for the connections? Like what resonates with us? What can we learn from their approach? And how can we adapt those insights to our own unique style?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that influence is a two-way street. We absorb inspiration from others, but we also contribute our own unique perspectives and experiences to the mix.
It's like a dance. You're moving in harmony with the music, but you're also adding your own steps and flourishes. That's what makes it so beautiful and dynamic. We're all part of this ongoing conversation of creativity, building on what came before us, while also carving our own path.
And I think one of the most powerful tools we have in this process is dialogue. Remember how Mike's breakthrough moment came when he started talking through his feelings with Transcript the Truth?
Oh, totally. Sometimes we get so stuck in our own heads that we lose sight of the bigger picture. And having someone to talk to, someone who can offer a different perspective and ask the right questions, can help us untangle those knots and see things more clearly.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be another creative person. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a
Yeah.
therapist.
Absolutely. The key is to find someone you trust, someone you feel comfortable sharing your vulnerabilities with, someone who can listen without judgment and offer support and encouragement. I remember when I was working on this project and I was just totally stuck with writer's block, and just talking it through with a friend helped me break through that wall. It was like I needed that sounding board to bounce ideas off of and gain a fresh perspective.
Yeah, sometimes all it takes is that little nudge in the right direction to get those creative juices flowing again.
So for you listening, think about who you can turn to when you're feeling creatively stuck. Who's your transcript the truth? Who can you have those open and honest conversations with?
For sure. And speaking of finding your flow, let's talk about some practical steps that you can take to navigate those influences and create space for your own voice to emerge.
All right, so where do we begin?
Well, I think it starts with being mindful of the sources of inspiration you're exposing yourself to. Are you surrounding yourself with art and ideas that uplift and energize you? Or are you constantly bombarded with negativity and comparison?
I see what you mean. It's about being intentional with what you're consuming.
Exactly. Think of it as curating your creative diet. What are you feeding your mind? What books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? Who are you following on social media?
Yeah, that's so important. It's so easy to get caught up in the comparison trap,
Mm.
especially online. I know I've definitely fallen into that spiral before, scrolling through Instagram
Mm-hmm.
and feeling inadequate compared to everyone else's seemingly perfect lives and projects.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But we have to remember that social media is often just a highlight reel. We're only seeing the finished product, not the messy behind the scenes process.
Right. We don't see the struggles, the doubts, the failures that everyone goes through.
So give yourself permission to unplug, step away from the noise,
Hmm?
and create space for your own unique voice to emerge.
I love that. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try new things. See what resonates with you. You might be surprised by what you discover.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to fail. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of the process. It's an opportunity to learn, grow, and refine your craft.
I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect right out of the gate. But the truth is, every masterpiece started as a rough draft. Every expert was once a beginner.
Exactly. And sometimes the most unexpected failures can lead to the most brilliant breakthroughs.
So embrace the messiness of it all and trust that your own unique path will unfold in its own time. And we are back for the final part of our deep dive. We've been talking about finding your flow amidst all these amazing creative influences out there, using Kendrick Lamar's GNX as our kind of guiding light.
Yeah, it's been really insightful to hear how people are reacting to this album and how it's sparking all these conversations about the creative process.
Definitely. One thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea that GNX itself is kind of like a metaphor for finding your own flow.
Yeah, the title is super open to interpretation, right? Generation Next, genetic code. It hints at evolution, legacy, and that unique blend of influences that make us who we are.
It's like we inherit these creative traits, but then we have the power to express them in our own unique way.
Mm.
Okay, I'm curious, what do you think GNX stands for? What comes to mind when you hear that title? Hit us up on social media and let us know.
For sure. So how do we find our own GNX then? That unique expression of our creative selves?
I think it all starts with paying attention to what really lights you up.
Hmm.
What are those pieces of art, ideas, experiences that have really had a deep impact on you?
Yeah, it could be anything, right? A song, a book, a film, a conversation, a place you've traveled to. What has sparked something deep inside you?
Hold on to that feeling.
That's it.
And then it's about digging a little deeper. How do those things connect to your own values, your
Yeah.
beliefs, your personal experiences, how they shapes your worldview and your unique perspective?
Right. And once you have a sense of those connections, it's time to start taking action. How can you translate those influences into your own creative expression? Maybe it's writing, painting, music, starting business, whatever your medium is. It's about finding your own way to contribute to that ongoing conversation of creativity.
I agree. But there's this one thing that I think so many of us struggle with, and that's the fear of not being original. That feeling that everything's already been done before.
Oh, I know that feeling. Like there's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. But, and this is super important, originality isn't about creating something entirely brand new from scratch. It's about bringing your unique perspective and experiences to the table.
It's about making those unexpected connections between different ideas. Like what happens when you combine your love of hip hop with your passion for gardening, or your knowledge of astrophysics with your skill in baking?
Who knows what amazing creations could come from those unexpected mashups?
Exactly. And even Kendrick Lamar, one of the most innovative artists of our time, draws inspiration from those who came before him.
That's right. Like Transcript the Truth mentioned on the Creative Vibes podcast, Tupac had a huge influence on Kendrick. So don't be afraid to be inspired by your heroes,
Mhm.
to study their techniques, and even pay homage to their work. But always remember to bring your own unique voice to the mix. That's what will make your work stand out.
It's like that saying, good artists borrow, great artists steal. But I think what they're really stealing is inspiration, not the actual work itself. They're taking those influences and transforming them into something completely new.
And one more thing. Finding your flow amidst all these influences, it's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing journey of exploration and evolution.
Yeah, your influences will change over time. Your creative voice will mature. Your definition of success might even shift.
That's totally okay. Be patient with yourself, embrace that journey, and trust that you'll find your way. What if we try to reframe this whole idea of being creatively lost instead of viewing it as a negative thing? What if it's actually an opportunity for growth and discovery?
I like that. Because sometimes it's in those moments of feeling lost that we are the most open to new possibilities.
Exactly. So if you're feeling creatively stuck right now, don't despair. Embrace the unknown, explore new horizons, and trust that the journey itself is the reward. You might just surprise yourself and find your own GNX along the way.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
We hope you found it inspiring. And remember, keep creating. The world needs your unique voice. Until next time.